It started with the lists. She liked lists. Grocery lists, weekend lists, lists for things we'd never do. Then she wrote one called Marriage Rules. 20 items, each one neat, deliberate, written with a soft black pen. I remember the way she capped it when she finished, a small click like a lock turning. Rule 1. No phones after 9 p.m. Rule 2. Separate laundry. Rule 3. No surprises. The rest followed that rhythm. Each one polite, reasonable, framed like good advice. But they all had the same tone, control disguised as order. When I read them, I smiled. It felt childish, like something she needed to prove. I didn't argue. I signed the paper she taped to the fridge. She said, "Just so we're clear." I said, "Sure." I thought it was cute then. Later, it started to feel like distance in writing. I asked her out the next evening. Not out, just to walk. She said she was tired, already brushed her teeth, maybe tomorrow. I nodded. She smiled in that way that closed the conversation without being rude. The air between us always had that thin politeness. I tried again the next night. She had work emails. The night after that, a headache, a small shrug, a soft apology, the door to the bedroom closing just a little too early. None of it was cruel. That was the strange part. She wasn't cold, just precise. Like her rules. Each refusal folded neatly into the next. That I started to notice her tone when she said no. The way her voice dropped at the end of the word, like it wasn't personal, just procedure. I'd stand there for a second, hands in my pockets, pretending to check my phone, pretending it didn't matter. Then I'd leave the room. The silence after felt exact, contained. I'd sit in the kitchen for a while, staring at the light under the bedroom door. She always turned it off at 10:15 sharp. I could time it. I started to at first. I told myself I was being patient. Relationships go through phases, right? That's what people say. I told myself not to press her. She needed space. I thought if I waited long enough, she'd come around. But waiting started to feel like obedience. I'd lie in bed and listen to her breathing, slow and steady, like she was already somewhere else. I wondered what she dreamed about. Probably order. Probably rules. I remember one night, maybe a week into the new rules, I touched her arm while she was reading. Just a light touch, nothing more. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up. She just kept reading, her fingers sliding to mark her place. The gesture was so calm it felt rehearsed. I pulled my hand back, suddenly aware of the space between us. She turned a page. That was it. That page turn felt louder than anything I could say. There's a kind of fatigue that comes from being politely ignored. It's not anger. It's the slow erosion of meaning. You stop expecting warmth. You start cataloging patterns instead. She had a pattern for everything. Even her silence was consistent. Some nights, she'd hum while brushing her hair, low, tuneless, soft. I started to memorize the sound. It made her seem human again. For a second, I asked again, 2 weeks in. Not with words this time. Just leaned in when she walked past me in the hallway. She stopped, blinked once, and said, "Don't make it weird." I stepped back. She smiled faintly, as if to soften it, but the damage was already done. "Sorry," I said. "No problem," she replied. The phrase hung there, neutralized, harmless. I began keeping small mental notes. When she went to bed, when she woke up, how long she spent on her phone before sleep. None of it was intentional at first. It was something my mind did on its own. A quiet accounting. Numbers to explain the shape of her distance. The data didn't make her any closer, but it gave me something to hold. One night, I came home late from work. The lights were off except for the one over the kitchen sink. The fridge hummed. Her marriage rules list was still there, taped perfectly straight. I read it again, slowly this time. I realized something strange. There were no rules that applied to her. Every one of them was about me. Things I could or couldn't do. I wondered if she noticed that, or if it was the point. I touched the edge of the paper. The tape was warm from the light above it. I thought about tearing it down. Instead, I just added one small dot in the corner with a pen. A mark no one would notice but me. Proof that I'd been there, that I existed in her orders somewhere. She came in behind me then, sleepy-eyed, hair tangled. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. She looked at me for a second too long, then turned and poured herself a glass of water. "You're up late," she said. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She nodded. "Try reading. It helps." Then she went back to bed. I stood there, staring at her empty glass. There was a small fingerprint on it, hers. I could almost hear her rule number 17 echoing in my head. No dishes left overnight. I washed it. That was the rhythm for a while. Her rules, my compliance. My attempts, her refusals. I wasn't angry yet. Just observant. Detached, but not gone. Like a scientist watching something decay under glass. Every no she gave me became data. Every smile, an exception worth noting. She moved through our home like a careful ghost, leaving traces of herself in perfect lines. Folded towels, arranged books, wiped counters. I followed the trail without meaning to. I told a friend once that things were fine. He asked if we still went out together. I said we were busy. He said, "You sound tired." I laughed. He was right. But it wasn't the kind of tired sleep could fix. It was the kind that grows when silence becomes routine. One evening, she rewrote the list. She said the old one needed updating. Version 2, she called it, smiling. She replaced some rules with new ones, more specific this time. No touching without asking. That one stood out. I wanted to ask why she needed to write that down, but I didn't. I just nodded. Got it, I said. She thanked me. Actually said, "Thank you." Like I was signing a contract. That night, I didn't ask her anything. I didn't try to touch her or speak. I just sat beside her on the couch while she watched a show. I watched her instead. The way her eyes followed the screen, the way she adjusted the blanket, the small, unconscious movements that made her feel distant and alive at the same time. She laughed once, quietly, at something on the show. I realized I hadn't heard her laugh in days. I wanted to ask what was funny, but I knew she'd say, "You wouldn't like it." So I stayed quiet. It's strange, the way rejection changes shape over time. At first, it stings. Then it dulls. Then it becomes a kind of background music you stop noticing, until one night you realize you know every note by heart. That's where I was. I wasn't angry. I was simply aware that I started to dream about her handwriting. Not her face, not her voice, just the neat slope of her letters, the way she drew her lowercase r, small and careful. I could see it even when I closed my eyes. It felt like the essence of her, composed, legible, always within the lines. I wondered if she'd ever write my name again. Not in a rule. Just on its OWN.BY. The third week, the refusals didn't even sound like refusals anymore. Just routine exchanges. I'd say, "Want to go out?" She'd say, "Maybe another night." No tension, no apology. Just neutral. Like two colleagues acknowledging a missed meeting. I started to respond with "sure" or "no problem." I said it with the same tone she used, the same quiet finality. It almost felt like balance. Still, every night, I waited a little after she went to bed. I'd listen to the faint click of her phone charging, the sound of her turning over once before settling. Then silence. I'd look at the list again before turning off the kitchen light. The pen mark I'd made was still there, small and dark. It comforted me that I think she noticed the mark eventually. One morning, the paper was gone, replaced with a clean copy, same handwriting, same 20 rules. Might I was missing. I stood there, coffee in hand, and smiled. She'd erased me without even realizing it. Or maybe she had. That night, I didn't ask her anything. I didn't try to reach out or speak. I just watched her brush her hair, her reflection half lit in the mirror. The brush moved slowly, methodically, like everything she did. She caught my eyes in the mirror and smiled faintly. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" She nodded. "Good." Then she turned off the light, and the room went dark. After she rewrote the list, something shifted. Not between us exactly, more like inside me. I stopped trying to change anything. I told myself it was acceptance, but it was really observation. I began to pay attention in a different way. Detached. Precise. Like taking inventory of a room you no longer live in, but still know by heart. Her routines were exact. She woke at 6:42 every morning. Never 6:40, never 6:45. The alarm rang once, a faint chime. She'd stretch her fingers before opening her eyes, then touch the nightstand to make sure the phone was there. She always smiled, a small one, like she was greeting herself. Then she'd walk to the kitchen and start the coffee. 2 scoops, level. A pause between them. Milk, not cream. I timed it once, 9 minutes from alarm to first sip. I didn't plan to. My mind just counted on its own. When she left for work, she carried her bag on the same shoulder every day. Left. It made the strap wear faster on that side. I noticed the stitching beginning to fray. She never did. I thought about telling her, but that would have broken the quiet pattern between us. Some things are better left unspoken when silence becomes the rule. That I worked from home. That made it easier to notice the small things. The sound of her keys in the lock every evening. A soft jingle, 2 short turns, then the click. The pause before she entered, as if she reset herself just outside the door. Inside, she'd say, "Hey," not "hi." Always "hey." I'd say it back. Then she'd put her things away in the same order. Shoes, coat, bag, phone, hair up, sigh. I knew the order like a ritual. She hummed sometimes while cooking. It wasn't a melody I recognized. It never had structure, just fragments of sound. I started recording it on my phone without meaning to. Not out of malice. Just curiosity. I'd play it back late at night, volume low. It sounded like someone trying to remember a song they'd once loved. That I noticed she never looked at the old wedding photos on the shelf anymore. Dust gathered on the frames, thin gray lines across our faces. One night, I wiped them clean. The next day, the dust was back. She didn't mention it. I wondered if she even saw them. The second version of the rules stayed on the fridge for weeks. I read them so often I memorized them without trying. Sometimes I'd recite them in my head while brushing my teeth, just to see if I could get all 20 in order. I could. I added a silent 21st at the end. Remember everything. I started writing small notes of my own. Not rules, just observations. Times, gestures, words. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she lied. The way she rubbed her wrist when she was anxious. None of it meant anything to her, but it gave shape to the space she left. A quiet structure. She once said she liked when things were predictable. "It keeps me calm," she told me. I said, "You can't control everything." She looked up from her book and smiled. "No," she said, "but I can try." I thought about that sentence for days. It was the truest thing she'd ever said. We slept facing opposite directions. I'd wake sometimes around 3 a.m., see her back turned, the faint blue light from the street falling across her shoulder. She looked peaceful. I'd watch until the light shifted, then close my eyes again. There's something comforting about stillness, even when it isn't shared. After a while, the idea of asking her out again felt unnecessary. The question had become a kind of performance, and every performance needs an audience. She wasn't watching anymore, so I stopped performing. Instead, I watched. Not to punish her, not even to understand. Just to be near the truth of her. The small, exact truth that lived in repetition. I began to map her days. Where she went, when she returned. It was easy. She followed her own structure so strictly it might as well have been written down. Mondays, gym after work. Tuesdays, grocery store. Wednesdays, home by 6:30. Thursdays, a call with her sister. Fridays, early dinner, long bath, bed by 10. I didn't have to ask. I just knew. There was one night she came home late. No message. No explanation. She walked in at 10:20, hair damp from rain, face unreadable. I said nothing. She dropped her bag, went straight to the shower. I stood in the kitchen, waiting for her to come back out, expecting something. Maybe an apology, maybe a lie. She said only, "You're still up?" I said, "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, to herself more than to me. Then, "You should get some rest." I said, "Yeah." But I didn't move. I stayed until she turned off the bathroom light. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. I watched her pour her coffee, exact as ever. The rhythm was back. Whatever had broken in her schedule, she'd already repaired it. That calm disturbed me more than the lateness. It meant I wasn't needed even for disruption. One night, I took down the new list. Slowly, carefully, so the tape wouldn't tear. I put it in a drawer, folded. I didn't replace it. She didn't mention it for 2 days. On the third, she asked, "Did you move the rules?" I said, "Maybe." She frowned, but only for a second. "I'll rewrite them," she said. "No need," I replied. She paused, studied me, then shrugged. "Okay." That was it. She never rewrote them. I think she forgot, or decided not to remember. After that, the silence between us took on a new weight. Not angry, not sad, just steady, like we'd reached some kind of quiet agreement without words. She lived her rules. I observed them. It felt balanced, almost peaceful. Sometimes, late at night, I'd watch her sleep from across the room. Not close enough to disturb her, just enough to see the rise and fall of her breathing. The shadows on the wall moved slowly with the passing cars outside. I'd think about how easy it would be to speak, to say her name, to ask if she was awake, and how impossible it felt. Speech was noise now, And noise had consequences. I started turning off my phone before bed. No reason. It just felt right. Like matching her rhythm in some unspoken way. She noticed once. "You never used to do that," she said. I shrugged. "Maybe I learned from you." She smiled, small and distant. "Good habit." Then she turned away, the notebooks filled slowly. Not every day, just when something changed, a new pattern, a missed step, an anomaly. The notes became a record of her existence, as if by writing it down I could preserve what was left. It wasn't obsession, not really. It was attention. That's what I told myself. Attention as a form of care. There's a strange satisfaction in knowing someone so well they stop being mysterious. You start to see the machinery under the skin, the triggers, the habits, the loops. It's not love anymore. It's understanding. Maybe that's colder. Maybe it's purer. One night, she woke suddenly, maybe from a dream. I was sitting in the chair by the window, half asleep. She turned toward me, her voice soft. "Were you watching me?" I said no, just thinking. She didn't ask what about. She just nodded and went back to sleep. I stayed there until morning. The following week, she changed her morning coffee routine. No milk. Black. I noticed immediately, of course. She didn't comment. Maybe she wanted to feel unpredictable again. Maybe she sensed I'd been keeping track. But even that became part of the pattern, the attempt at randomness. I logged it too. There's a certain point where observation becomes presence. You start to exist in the spaces you occupy quietly, like furniture. She moved around me as if I were a wall, an object she didn't need to think about. That didn't bother me. It meant I could see her clearly, without interruption. That I remember the last time we spoke before everything went still. She said, "You seem different lately." I asked, "How so?" She tilted her head. "Just calmer." I said, "I stopped trying to fix things." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's good." I said, "Maybe." Then she kissed my cheek, quick, almost mechanical, and went to bed. After she fell asleep, I stood in the kitchen again, looking at the empty spot on the fridge. No rules. No words. Just a clean white surface. I thought about writing something there, a single rule of my own. But not yet. Not tonight. That I turned off the light and listened to the house settle. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed, headlights slicing briefly through the dark. Then silence. A silence so complete it felt intentional. That was when I knew I'd already added my rule. I just hadn't written it down. Not yet. The quiet came gradually, like dust settling. You don't notice it at first. It's just less noise, less movement, fewer small collisions of daily life. Then one day you wake and realize it's complete. She woke before me that morning. I could hear her steps, soft against the floor. The kettle, the cup, the spoon against porcelain. The same sounds, but thinner somehow, like they'd been recorded through glass. I stayed in bed, eyes open, listening. It felt like eavesdropping on something already gone. When I finally walked into the kitchen, she was standing by the window, holding her coffee with both hands. The fridge was bare again, clean white. No lists, no notes, just the faint marks of old tape where the paper used to be. She turned when she heard me, smiled, but a little slower than usual. "Morning," she said. I nodded. "Morning." We stood like that for a moment, the air between us still. "I had a weird dream," she said after a while. Everything in the apartment looked the same, but it didn't feel like home. She looked out the window again. "Isn't that strange?" I said. "Maybe it just means you're tired." She nodded. "Maybe." That was the last conversation we had that felt like one. After that, words drifted further apart, scattered like crumbs on a table. She still went to work, still came home at the same time, still brushed her hair before bed. But something in her rhythm faltered. A small hesitation when she locked the door. A pause before turning on the lamp. Like she was moving through a version of her life that didn't quite fit anymore. I noticed it, of course. I always noticed. The small tremor in her fingers when she checked her phone. The way she stopped humming while cooking. The silence stretched. She didn't fill it. Neither did I. Some nights, she'd stand by the bedroom door, just standing, as if she'd forgotten what she meant to do next. I'd watch from the chair by the window, pretending to read. She'd glance at me, then at nothing, then back again. Once she asked, "Are you awake?" I said yes. She waited a moment, then said, "It's quiet." I said yes. She nodded, then turned off the light. After that, she slept lighter. I could tell from her breathing. Shallow, uneven. Sometimes she'd turn toward my side of the bed, like reaching for warmth, then stop halfway. I'd keep still. I didn't want to disturb the silence that I started staying up later, sitting in the dark kitchen after she went to bed. The hum of the refrigerator had become a kind of companion. Familiar, steady, unchanging. I'd look at the white door of the fridge and think about all the versions of that list. The first, the second, the one she said she'd rewrite but never did. 20 rules. All hers. Then mine. Just one. I never wrote it down, but I repeated it sometimes, quietly, like a prayer. One rule. Simple. Final. Let her live by her silence. Weeks passed like that. Her mornings grew slower. She'd linger at the mirror longer than before, as if expecting her reflection to answer something. She began to check the locks twice before leaving. Sometimes she'd walk into a room and stop, scanning it. Once she said, "Did you move something?" I said, "No." She frowned slightly. "Feels different." I shrugged. "Maybe you're imagining it." The truth was, I hadn't moved anything. Not really. I just stopped existing where she expected me to be. I no longer waited in the kitchen when she came home. I didn't reply right away when she spoke. I let pauses stretch, small absences accumulating until the space between us filled with them. Presence turned to outline. She noticed. People always do. Eventually, I remember one morning she called my name from the other room. The sound was tentative, almost unsure. I answered, but quietly. She didn't hear. She called again, softer this time. Then nothing. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the wall, shallow, uncertain. I stayed still. There's a strange kind of power in not answering when someone expects you to. Not cruelty. Just silence returned in its pure form. That evening, she didn't cook. She sat on the couch, knees pulled up, phone in hand, scrolling but not reading. When I passed by, she looked up as if surprised to see me. "You're quiet lately," she said. I said, "You too." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Guess we've both changed." "Maybe," I said. Then she asked, "Are you happy?" I thought for a moment. "I'm calm." She nodded. "That's something." Later, she went to bed early. The lights clicked off one by one. I stayed in the chair by the window again. The city outside was muted, the occasional passing car painting brief strips of light across the floor. I could see her reflection faintly in the darkened glass, a blurred shape under the blanket. I didn't move. When morning came, she woke to an empty apartment. Not empty of things, just of noise. The chair was still there, the books, the coffee mug, everything in its place. But I wasn't in the kitchen, not in the living room, not waiting. She called my name once. Then again. The sound echoed slightly, carried by the still air. No answer. She walked through the room slowly, like moving through someone else's house. Her hand brushed the counter, the back of the chair, the edge of the table. Everything was as it should be, but something was missing. The rhythm, the presence, the small resistance that keeps life from floating away. She stopped by the fridge. Her eyes lingered on the clean white surface. For a moment, she looked confused, as if trying to remember what used to be there. Outside, the light shifted. The day began. I watched her from across the street, through the open window. She stood still for a long time. I could tell when she finally realized. Not what exactly, just that something was different. She stepped back from the fridge, turned slowly, scanned the room again. Her lips moved slightly, maybe saying my name, maybe not. Then she sat down, hands folded, staring at nothing. From where I stood, she looked smaller. The distance made her edges softer, like she was fading into her own stillness. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like loss either. Just balance. The silence had evened out that I didn't stay long. Just watched long enough to see her move again, stand, open a window, let in a bit of air. Her shoulders straightened. The space swallowed her movement. Then I turned away. There's peace in quiet endings. No confrontation, no final words. Just the slow return of stillness after too much sound. She'd have her routines again, eventually. They just wouldn't include me. I walked down the street, hands in pockets, the early light sharp and cold. Behind me, the window stayed open. I could still hear the faint hum of the refrigerator if I listened hard enough. The sound of her world continuing, measured, predictable, untouched. That I didn't need to see her again. I already knew what came next. She'd make new lists. Maybe 20 more rules. Maybe fewer. All neat, deliberate, in her soft black pen. And somewhere, invisible, beneath all of them, my single rule would still hum quietly. The one that ended her game and mine. Let her live by her silence.